All right. So much insight, so much insights. So now we are taking a flight to the beautiful Argentina, and we have the pleasure to have with us Roberto Fernandez, agronomic engineer and with PhD from the Duke University. Hello, Roberto.
Hi, Jose. How are you doing?
Doing good, doing good. It's afternoon for you, morning. I'm a bit
No,
lost right
it's
now.
10 p.m. 10 p.m. in the night.
10 p.m. So more or less like here. Good night, though.
Yes, sort of normal time.
All right. So, Roberto, tell us about the incredible job that you do, and how do we foresee somehow the future of our planet Earth?
Well, so I should share my presentation, Jose.
Yeah, let's do it.
Please tell me if you are seeing my screen.
Yes,
Perfect.
perfect.
So what I would like to spend these 10 minutes on are the obstacles and opportunities for an ecological intensification of agriculture in Argentina. And I start by thanking the Future Food Institute and Sarah Roberto for the invitation, and also the Italian embassy in my city, the Italian consulate in Buenos Aires. So with that, I will just start with my presentation. The idea of ecological intensification implies using ecology principles to improve our production systems. And as the top sentence says, it requires changes that go beyond individual farms. That's different from ecological intensification and other types of sustainable intensification. And just to give you one example, what you need to do for ecological intensification requires things at the level of the landscape, for example. A common advice is to retain, for example, at least 20% of the native area free from crops and livestock. Another example would be down here, when you want to manage water resources in an ecological way, you need to think of the watershed and not the individual farm. But it's not only that. Ecological intensification requires those kind of changes, and also require that you think beyond the traditional spheres of ecology, agronomy, and socioeconomic issues. Why I'm saying that? Because, as Pablo Titonel illustrated it very clearly here, it calls for institutional innovation. And what do we mean by that, or at least what I do mean by that, is that it requires community-wide agreements on land use that pay attention to power inequalities, that include participation of the community, and that anticipate revisions. All that has to be agreed before you can move along a path towards ecological intensification as shown here. Only then, with that kind of political agreements, the innovation and development of appropriate technologies will result. What we think as out-of-the-mill, regular, normal, sensible technologies are dependent, often tacitly, on these kind of agreements. And then is how we also become strong in certain types of research and development, those that come after those agreements. Now I move to a couple of, actually 3 examples from technologies in my country, which is blessed with many type of ecosystems and productions, but I will focus, which are all important, of course, but I will focus on the larger production that goes on in the center north of the country, that involves 50 million cattle heads, a little more than the people heads that we have in the country, and around, depending on the year, of 30 or 40 million hectares of annual crops. I'll present this as pairs of challenges and opportunities. One challenge that we have in extensive agriculture is that it is too successful, and because these kind of systems produce the main commodities for export, and under business as usual conditions generate very hard to replace currency revenues. But on the other hand, of the same coin, you can say that by the sheer volume of operation, it's relatively easy for the central state to control this by traditional means, by traditional fiscal and taxing means. For example, in the last 20 years, you can see that the area with soybean increased, the area with maize increased, but in a scale that's much smaller. But at some point, you see a reversal on that pattern, and that's just because the reduction in core exploitation duties. That was an action taken by the government that completely changed the activities that farmers chose to do. And that had a very likely unintended effect, that was that the area that under almost continuous no-till soybean had a chance to add cereals as corn here and wheat, which I'm not showing, to the crop rotations. And that has huge implications for the quality and possibilities of managing adequately fertility of the soils. As I said, that probably wasn't on purpose, but that's a kind of scale that you can change activities by standard fiscal measure. One characteristic of our cropping systems is that they are thrifty. As these authors postulate here, Argentina uses very little labor compared to China, for example, very little nitrogen and phosphorus on fertilizers compared to many other developed countries, and doesn't have exportation subsidies. As I told you, it actually has exportation taxes. And this, in a sense, this thrifty cropping or generalized low use of inputs can be seen as opportunities as well. For example, on the technical side, successful and evolving process-based technologies have arisen behind this attitude and policy and custom of having thrifty cropping. On the other side, on the institutional opportunities, one might think that higher use of inputs might lead to higher yields and therefore to land sparing, as in Borlaug's hypothesis. But that actually doesn't happen, and that leads us to the second challenge of the three I will show. The second challenge is that intensification over the years did not lead to expected land savings, because what occurred was a rebound effect. Most of the agricultural expansion occurred over naturally wooded areas that then become soybean and corn fields. For that to change, we have an institutional opportunity that we have of having a national law in place. And as of today, the regional Escazú agreement that enters in effect today allows a more open and informed citizen involvement in land multiple use planning. On the technological side, we can readily respond to that because we have existing very well proven process technologies for agroforestry, for example, and cattle management in these kind of areas. As a third challenge, I will pose that someone could say, well, there are too many actors involved. It's very difficult to design a policy that covers them all. And that's actually not true, because information technologies today are readily available for e-governance, tailoring policies for different stakeholders. So with these three examples, my major point is that innovation begins by political decisions, not by technological developments. And those decisions are to act or not act on issues. And the result of this are value-laden trajectories that should not be presented as scientifically objective. Our role as academics, as I see it, is to broaden the range of choices and act, as this author says, as honest brokers of policy alternatives. Because science can point to existence of a problem, but science cannot provide a unique guidance on what actions to actually take in specific circumstances. This kind of approach and work requires that we feel comfortable coming out of our own discipline. It requires interdiscipline work, and something that is working well for us in our campus towards the discussion and research of these issues is that our students, undergrad students, both in agronomy and environmental science, share the same campus. They work together. Many of their professors are joint professors in both majors and offer the students share their classrooms. So if this is not interdiscipline at the core, I don't know what it is. Well, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much, Roberto. Thank you so much for being here with us. And now we have to continue with our travel around the world. Now we are going to launch what we have called the voices of the food system.
It begins with our farmers. They are the frontline workers of our food system, and often working under very, very difficult conditions led by climate change and conflict, and with billions of people on a global scale not having access to good food. And to achieve the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal 2, Zero Hunger for All, we all need to work together to fix our broken food system.
Begins with unpolluted air, land, and water, environmentally sustainable farming and fishing, and humane animal husbandry. But it doesn't end there. Climate change is disrupting the natural order of our planet, and at the core of global warming is our broken food system. There's people all over the world working together in accordance with the global goals to build a better future for everyone. These people aren't just scientists and politicians. These people are small business owners, farmers, and chefs. And we believe that by changing the way we do business, we can create a better world by 2030. Chef's Manifesto is a global action network focused on SDG 2, Zero Hunger by 2030. We believe that when sustainable-minded chefs and producers work closely with smallholder farmers and fishers, we can get our food system back on track, protect biodiversity, and deliver good food for all.
Food is our birthright. However, good food is vulnerable to disruption. When violence starts and peace is threatened, when water rises and rain does not fall, when democracy fails and power shifts, good food is threatened. And then, for billions of people, this birthright is brutally neglected. It's our responsibility to engage to reverse this situation, raising our voice, using our power of choice to support regenerative sustainable systems which generate good food for all. Thank you.
Good food begins with farmers. Small-scale farmers are working on the front line of our food systems. If we are to achieve a global food system that produces enough nutritious food within planetary boundaries, then we do need to support these men and women who are vital to feeding both rural and urban people. We need to invest in them so they can thrive in a world where they are, for example, battling climate change, locusts, and now also COVID-19. Farmers are key to achieving zero hunger by 2030 and provide good food for all.